and welcome to Tiger Sidelines on MC22. My name is Bo Bayman. Glad to be joined by Dave Matter of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and PowerMizzou.com's Gabe DeArmond. As always, a lot to talk about this week. But of course, we have to start at Faurot Field last Saturday with the Missouri Tigers upsetting the 17th ranked at that time LSU Tigers 45-41. The Tigers get their first win on the season. They're now 1-2. And a win that Missouri earned, Dave, but I'm not sure a lot of people saw this coming.
No, they really didn't. I mean, people keep talking about LSU being the defending national champions, but they're a shell of that team that beat Clemson for the title, back in January. So, but the expectations for LSU were still pretty high going into the year just based on all the talent they had coming back. So kind of the national narrative from that game is what happened to LSU. This just kind of adds on to their struggles they had against Mississippi State. And that loss looks even worse now because Mississippi State doesn't look all that good. But I think, around the state, definitely here in Columbia, the talk is all about Missouri getting a win that sort of validates this staff and at least, gives some credibility to all the talk we've heard from Coach Drinkwitz and his staff over the last few months. Now they've got some actual substance to sell.
Gabe, I saw a thing that I thought was probably prudent where somebody said, can we stop calling them the defending national champs? They're not defending anything. Let's call them the reigning champs. They kind of looked like that. They could score with anybody, but they couldn't stop anything talking about LSU on Saturday.
Yeah, that's all true. But look, if you're Missouri, you don't apologize for beating LSU.
No way.
That's a huge win for this program because no matter what they've lost, all that, they've still got 64 and 5-star kids on the team. They still out-talent Missouri at almost every position. And Missouri was down. I mean, they had one scholarship defensive tackle who had ever seen the field before. They had a bunch of guys at wideout that if you had asked us in May, hey, what do you expect out of these guys? We would have said, well, they'll have a nice time on the sidelines watching the guys that are playing. And, they went out and did it with the guy who wasn't even the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season. So nationally, absolutely, the story is more about what's become of LSU. But I don't think Missouri should feel bad or even care about that because even a down LSU, that's a big win for Eli Drinkwitz in week 3.
Dave, as we start to break this one down, let's start in the trenches first. Going into the game, everybody said, well, LSU is going to win this game in the trenches. The Missouri defensive line did a great job against the run, and the offensive line gave Connor Bazelak plenty of time to throw.
Yeah, I thought Missouri's defensive line really held its own, considering they had 5 guys and they were just rotating one of them in and out. Like Gabe said, nobody other than Markel Utze had really played inside before. And you didn't really notice it. For one, LSU didn't even try to run. I mean, not until late in the game, and they didn't get much done there. So that group up front deserves a lot of credit. And then Missouri's offensive line kind of keeps doing what it's been doing. It's not a glaring weakness that some people thought. They had to change out left tackles midway through the game. There was some pressure on Bazelak, but not much. I mean, he and the running game, I think both backs, and then you include Jalen Knox in there for some of the carries he had, they all averaged over 6 yards per carry. So it was a really productive day. And I don't know if Missouri controlled the line of scrimmage, but they certainly didn't lose it by any means.
Absolutely. And you talked about Connor Bazelak, Dave. He had a magnificent day. Threw for over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and really looked poised back there as the number 1 quarterback for this team.
That's what stands out to me is just he doesn't get rattled. He doesn't that's a big stage for him. And we've seen other quarterbacks and other teams and on Missouri's team sometimes where they just can't handle that pressure, and nothing seems to get to this kid.
And Gabe, while this was a good road win for Missouri, even though it was at home, the offense seemed to click this time. I mean, they had guys wide open, and every misdirection and everything in motion just worked this week.
Yeah, and to me, it was a little bit of a chicken or the egg question. Did the offense draw confidence from Eli Drinkwitz coming out from jump and opening things up and just emptying the cupboard? Or was he freed to open the cupboard because his offense was doing things well? You know, Larry Roundtree running helps open up the pass game, which helps open up some of the razzle-dazzle. But, I mean, he had 2 quarterbacks and ran Wildcat on the first snap of the game. The first touchdown was a flea flicker. They later ran a reverse flea flicker, you know, which honestly, if probably should have worked. It was a perfect throw, just maybe 2 inches beyond the reach of Daniel Parker. So he emptied the cupboard. He came out, it looked like from snap 1 to me, and said, we think we can win this game, and we're going to put everything out there to do it. And then his kids went out and executed it. But look, when you see things like Micah Wilson 27 yards clear of anybody, or Chance Looper on a crossing route with literally without a defender in the picture, that's scheme. I mean, that's coaching, that's finding matchups, and that's putting guys in position, because I don't mean to disrespect those kids, but the chances that they're just, it also could be a scheme and failures on LSU's part. But I mean, you're not lining up one-on-one and just beating guys this badly. That doesn't happen in the SEC. So Eli Drinkwitz deserves a ton of credit for that.
And Gabe, staying with that, that's really film study too. It seems to me that they saw something on film and said, hey, we can take advantage of that.
Yeah, he explained that after the game and used some terms that I don't exactly know what they mean, but basically he said LSU's defensive backs, they get caught watching, and you can suck them up with some play action and things like that. And that's what Missouri did. Now, again, there's some more to it. I mean, if you watch the overhead view of that Micah Wilson touchdown, clearly the cornerback thought one defense was called and the safety thought another defense was called, and neither one of them covered the guy running all by himself 41 yards down the middle of the field. So you still need a little help, but I came out of that game as impressed as I've been with the coaching job and the scheme as I've been at Missouri in a long, long time.
No doubt about it. Dave, this game was back and forth, and really the one thing that I kept thinking was, can Missouri get the lead late? And they finally did with 5 minutes to go. LSU gets the ball back. They march right downfield. They get a call where they go out of bounds at the 1, first down and goal at the 1. And as a Missouri fan, you're sitting there going, we know how this ends. This is Mizzou. But the defense rises up and stuffs them on that goal line stand to win this game, which was incredible.
Yeah, I think most Missouri fans probably expected LSU just to march all the way down. And, well, they got almost there. They got to the 1. Huge tackle by Adam Sparks. That play was kind of lost in the conversation with the other plays on the goal line. He saves the touchdown. And then I thought it was interesting, too, that Drinkwitz has since said they pretty much knew exactly what LSU would call down there on the goal line, because they did the same thing, the same series of calls, at least on first, second, third down against Alabama last year. And again, scheme was right, but you really credit the players. They stuffed the run on first and second down. Nick Bolton made a huge play there on a touchdown that Miles Brennan probably should have completed if he just threw the ball a little bit wider, a little bit higher, because the guy was wide open. But Bolton, read it really well, knocked it down, and then Bledsoe with the game-saving play in the end zone on a play that probably reminded fans of the one a couple years ago against Kentucky when LSU got away with a push in the end zone. They don't call that. You rarely see that called in that situation. And but he still, made the play. And gosh, the ending that Missouri fans probably did not envision when LSU took the ball over there with 5 minutes to go ends up happening.
Can I point out too that third down play should have been a penalty on LSU? The outside receiver came in and absolutely destroyed Josh Bledsoe
on the
and
pick,
put him on his back. It was clearly offensive pass interference, but it wasn't going to be called.
Yeah.
And it almost could have been a Nick Bolton pick 6. I mean, if he grabs it instead of knocks it down, again, I'm not, we're just mixing words here, but I mean, if he grabs it, he's got nothing but daylight in front of him. And Nick Bolton, by the way, named the Bronco Nagurski Defensive Player of the Week. It was revealed after the game he's playing a little nicked up, but he's like, doesn't matter. Pain doesn't matter. You remember the wins.
And he had, just the all-around game. He had 8 tackles. I think he had maybe 1 missed tackle in the entire game. He had 2 passes defended. They were 1 for 4 against him in coverage. I mean, this kid is doing absolutely everything for Missouri. And it's, people are starting to evoke Sean Weatherspoon as a comparison. And I don't know if we're quite there yet. Let's see what he does the rest of the season, but he's playing unbelievably well.
There was a moment there too where he disappeared from the sideline. He went into the locker room to get treated, but Missouri had the ball. Then he comes running out, and you're watching down there and thinking, I don't know if he's going to get back in the game. He missed one snap. Chad Bailey went out there for one snap, and then Bolton found his helmet, was back out there. So whatever was bothering him, you didn't seem to notice it.
So for the first 10 minutes of the show, we've been talking about this huge win, a huge win for Coach Drink and the way the team played. Now it's interesting because you thought, okay, you're going to play Vanderbilt, and that has all changed. I mean, everything is changing, it seems like, in the past 24 to 48 hours. No game this week. And I thought your question, Dave, was prudent yesterday. What do you do with this bye week to Coach Drink? He said, hey, we're going to use it to look at ourselves.
Yeah, you make the most of it. I mean, there are some glaring issues on this team. The turnovers are really bad. I mean, they are almost last in the country in turnover margin. They've only gotten one on defense. They've turned it over, I think, 6 times now. So that's something you address during this unexpected bye week. Obviously, they're going to do some recruiting, not the conventional, traditional recruiting, but they'll do what they can. And then you just got some guys, you rest up your guys that are hurt. This gives you another week now for those players that are in contact tracing too. I don't think those guys probably would have been able to play against Vandy that missed the LSU game, although these rules seem to kind of change by the week and the numbers seem to change by the week. But maybe now they'll be available for Florida if Missouri plays Florida. I mean, they've got I think reported 19 cases now, and their game with LSU this weekend is sort of in danger. So you just never know.
The interesting thing, too, to me, Gabe, is they got to find somebody who can catch a punt.
Yeah. And I did think, in all fairness, the first one on Saturday was not Chris Abrams-Drain's fault. The blocker blocked the gunner directly into him, right, as he was supposed to catch the ball. So now, look, the end result is the same. The punt hit the ground. Yeah, that's a concern. But I give Drinkwitz credit in that he changed guys and he put Jarvis Ware back there. I mean, how many games did we watch the last couple years where we're like, Jonathan Johnson's catching everyone he shouldn't and letting everyone go that he should catch, and Missouri just kept putting him back there. And it's like, well, then you deserve whatever happens because you're just continuing to do the same thing. Drinkwitz at least changed it up and was a little adventurous here and there, but Ware didn't end up having any issues.
Gabe, what's the latest you're hearing about how they're going to change the schedule, how they're going to fix the schedule? I mean, they don't have a lot of weeks here to mix things up. The original thought is they're going to play Vandy now on December 12th, right?
Right, and they do have no SEC team has had a bye yet. So all SEC team, Missouri's is November 7th, like Vandy's is next weekend. Everybody can play December 12th, and even teams that aren't in the SEC title game can actually play a game on December 19th, they've said. So there's some flexibility here, but the real thing is, like Dave was saying about Florida, I expect by the time people watch this, Florida LSU has been postponed. I don't think they're going to play that game this weekend. So the question then becomes, can Florida play by next weekend? If Florida can't play next weekend, Vandy has a bye next weekend. Missouri could play Vandy, but can Vandy play next weekend? And then you get into, well, you probably don't really want Missouri to have 2 weeks off. So is there a way we can shuffle another team up to next weekend? And I mean, look, here's what we've learned this year. All this stuff about scheduling games 14 years out is dumb. Teams are finding ways. Major League Baseball found a way to get the Cardinals to play 72 games in 6 days, I think. The NFL is playing games on Tuesday and moving games forward and back. You can do it. It's a headache, but you can get this done. And the number one goal remains to get every game played in whatever amount in 12 weeks, because I saw some Missouri fans yesterday saying, well, now we might not even play that Vandy game. We could just get to the end of the season. It's not going to matter. No, you know who it matters to? It matters to ESPN and that family of networks that has paid for it. And to the schools, the content has to be there to get that money. They are playing the game, if at all possible.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let's take a break. We will check the Twitter feed when we come back. Your tweets are next. You're watching Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. This is Tiger Sidelines. Gabe DeArmond, Dave Matter, and I'm Bo Bayman. Glad you could join us as always. We're at Tiger Sidelines on Twitter, and we got some good ones after the 45-41 victory over LSU. The first one coming to us from Josh, who said, drink, lifetime contract. I'd say there was a little excitement for this victory there, guys.
Name the stadium after him. Build a statue, sure.
If only we were all judged on our last day of work the way college football coaches are, it would be great and awful at the same time. Because, look, Ed Orgeron, like, there's legitimately people talking about how he needs to be fired. He won a national title 3 games ago and had the best team in the history of college football, but he's lost it. He got to go.
Next one says, it's early on Bazelak, but should he have started over Kelly Bryant could last season? And could it have changed the struggles, especially under Derek Dooley, or was it Dooley's inability to adjust to the scheme and lack of reliable wideouts too much for any player to mend?
I think the second part of that is right. The quarterback started to have some issues, and Derek Dooley didn't know what to do to fix it. I mean, I've said 100 times since Barry Odom was fired, if you're trying to construct a list of reasons he got fired, number one is, at the time he hired Derek Dooley as the offensive coordinator, nobody really understood it, and it looked good for a few games, but in the end, you kind of figured out why nobody really understood it.
Yeah, I mean, Dooley's offense was fine when he had a NFL starting quarterback back there, but as soon as that wasn't the case anymore, like Gabe said, there was no sense of problem solving. There was no reliable scheme to go to, like Eli Drinkwitz has, or like even a Josh Heupel had, where you can go, okay, well, we have these things in here when these things go wrong. And that's what happens when you hire a coordinator who's never done it before and, kind of admitted the day he got the job that he was just going to kind of make it up as he went along. So for Connor Bazelak's sake, maybe it's a good thing he wasn't, put out there last year. When he was, he tore his ACL. So I don't think it would have really benefited him at all. He looks like he's pretty good right now.
Next one says, does the Vandy game being moved help or hurt Mizzou in this case?
I mean, I always kind of look at it just is, right? I mean, both teams have to deal with the same thing. But to me, if anything, it helps, because I don't think it matters if you play Vanderbilt next weekend or on December 12th. That's a team you should be able to beat. Now, I understand we said the same thing last year, but Vandy's actually worse this year than they were last year, I think. But like Dave was pointing out, some guys get back now that I mean, you weren't going to have Kiki Chisholm and Damon Hazelton for that game. Now you might have them and a couple other guys.
Yeah, I think if you're a coach, you'd rather have an extra week off to prepare for a trip to Florida. I mean, assuming the game happens. And Vandy could be 0-9 by the time that game kicks off on December 12th. Who knows what they have left at that point. I think when you played 3 in a row that Missouri's played, I think you take the week off and you celebrate it. Not celebrate all week, but you're happy you have it.
All right, our last one is from Steve. He says, is Mizzou men's basketball going to host or go to one of these 4-team pod tournaments? And another thing we should point out, it was announced, I think it was yesterday or the day before, that MU-KU basketball is off for this year.
Yeah, I know Jeff Goodman has Missouri playing in some tournament down in Orlando with, I forget, like UCF, maybe San Diego State in their pod last week in November. But all we know about the schedule right now is they're starting November 25th, and the Big 12 SEC Challenge is the last couple days in December. Outside of that, they know nothing, so we know nothing.
Yeah, it's really been hard for Missouri and for schools in the SEC and other conferences to schedule these non-conference games because every conference is on a completely different page. I mean, like the Big Ten has been so consumed with getting their football schedule in order that they're not even really working that much on basketball yet. And also, the Big Ten has got these really strict COVID policies as far as contact tracing. I think if in the SEC, what is it, or the NCAA right now for football, 14 days they have to go into quarantine. For basketball in the Big Ten, I think it's 21 days. So Missouri, as we record this, Missouri's bragging rights game is in danger of maybe not happening because there is just so much up in the air with scheduling right now.
And Gabe, aren't there some, and they might be mid-majors, but aren't there some conferences who aren't starting any sports until after the new year?
Yeah, and at one point the Pac-12 wasn't going to do that, but now they probably are. It just, I know people want to know. Look, the truth is you probably aren't going to be able to go to the games anyway for the most part, unless you give a lot of money. So as long as you know 24 hours in advance, you'll be able to watch it on TV. But it's just all. I mean, this whole thing is. I'd hate to be a schedule maker. They're earning their money, and they don't get like Eli Drinkwitz type money. I don't think.
No, I don't think so. And as we've learned throughout the summer and throughout the fall so far, it's seriously day by day, week by week, and you just have to plan when they tell you to plan, and then you just go. And that's just the way the scheduling is these days. Chiefs go from playing on a Sunday to a Thursday to a Tuesday to I mean, you just play when they tell you to play. All right, we will take a break. When we come back, we will look ahead to Mizzou's new bye week. Plus, we'll talk about a tough loss for the Missouri soccer team. You're watching Tiger Sidelines on MC22. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Bo Bayman. This is Tiger Sidelines on MC22. I'm joined, as always, by Dave Matter and Gabe DeArmond. As we look to what else happened, the women's soccer team lost to Tennessee 2-1. It's a game they really dominated on Friday night, but gave up a goal with about 10 seconds left in the first half. Then went down 2-0, got one back, but they couldn't close the deal. They'll host LSU on Friday at 7 o'clock. Cross country hosts the Missouri Cross Country Invitational. Swimming and diving hosts TCU on Friday. But here's the other big story, and Dave, the Mizzou volleyball team, their season opener was postponed due to COVID as well.
Yeah, they've got this shortened schedule this year, and they're playing 2 games every weekend wherever they go, and they're supposed to go to Alabama to open the season. This is supposed to be a really good Missouri team. What are they ranked? Top 15 nationally, I think.
That's
and
correct.
They've got COVID cases, so they've got to delay their games. Now they're still going to Tuscaloosa, but they're just delaying the games by about a week or so, or even less than that. But I mean, there's no team that is immune to this. We've learned that.
And as we also learned, Gabe, if you have it, you got to wait 10 to 14 days, and it just puts a crimp in all the schedules.
Yeah, I mean, look, we said when all these rules came out in whatever, June or July or whatever it was, the immediate reaction from everybody that covered college sports was, this is going to make it really hard to get through a season. If everyone because, I mean, let's be honest, the contact tracing, they're, I think, really pushing it to say, oh, no, he wasn't within 6 feet of this guy for 15 minutes. I mean, if you're hanging out on the sidelines, these guys aren't wearing masks on the sidelines. You know, at one point we were told that was going to happen. It doesn't really seem to be happening. And I'm not here to judge that or not, but players, I know at one place they were talking about, they thought there might've been some spread by players going into the stands to see their families after games, and just all these rules make it so hard. Once you're out for 14 days. I mean, that's 20% of the season. And, or in volleyball, that's 4 matches at this point. So it'll be, I think, a surprise if everybody manages to get 10 football games in.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's look ahead to this week without Missouri playing. You have number 15 Auburn at South Carolina. The Gamecocks coming off that win against Vanderbilt, but they'll get a big test against the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, here's what I'm rooting for now. I'm rooting for Auburn to win every game, but not deserve to win it, because Auburn is the only fan base in the country that gets really mad when they win because they can't fire Gus Malzahn that week.
Pretty much.
All right, Dave, Kentucky plays at Tennessee. Tennessee tries to bounce back after their first loss of the season.
Yeah, they had it going there for a while against Georgia, but Georgia just shows up in the second half every week, it seems like. But this Kentucky team's kind of interesting. You know, they just manhandled Mike Leach's Mississippi State team last week. They don't have much of an offense, but unlike most teams in this league, they do appear to have a defense. So if Tennessee loses this one, man, all that goodwill about Jeremy Pruitt, you know, bringing the Vols back to, the top of the SEC East, man, that's going to lose some steam for sure.
At the beginning of the year, you wondered if it would be watchable. We were just talking, Gabe, Ole Miss at Arkansas might be watchable this weekend.
Ole Miss is the most fun team in America. I mean, I was a friend of mine covers them, and I was talking to him last night, and I said, look, if you're not going to be really good, be fun. Ole Miss is fun, man. I mean, I've watched a lot of their games this year because it's kind of like 7-on-7, but it's really fun to watch.
Number 11, Texas A&M will be at Mississippi State, and LSU will be at Florida, we think. As we tape this, it's still on, but as we said, that's a little dicey. But the big one of the week, obviously, is number 3, Georgia at number 2, Alabama. And Dave, that should be a slugfest. We've seen Alabama already here in Columbia. The Crimson Tide look awfully good, but so does Georgia, especially in those second halves.
Yeah, Georgia's defense is the best in the country again. I mean, I think that will keep them in this game. I don't know if they can score with Alabama, but I'm not sure Alabama will look like Alabama this week. This is a preview of the SEC championship game right now. I mean, it doesn't look like anybody's in the West is nearly as good as Alabama. And in the East, Florida losing last week, they've lost some of their momentum, and Georgia just looks like a more complete team at this point. So it's a nice week if you cover Missouri to have a day off or a night off so you can watch this game.
Yeah, that was the definite silver lining in that postponement is that game's at 7:00, and I think we're all going to tune in there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Georgia and Alabama will be watching. Missouri takes the week off. We'll talk about what they do rescheduling-wise next week as they get ready for hopefully a game at Florida. We'll talk about it next week. For Gabe DeArmond and Dave Matter, I'm Bo Bayman. Thanks as always for watching Tiger Sidelines right here on MC22.